And if there's one constant trait that everyone knows in this city, and I've been here my entire life, is no one dictates to me what I will do.
Well, that's Mayor-elect Bruce Harrell talking about his leadership style. The buck stops here, he says. Well, he is building a team that will have some interesting influences on his leadership. We're going to talk about who's on that support team, what that means for the future of the Harrell administration, plus what's happening with a new state plan on homelessness, and what are the latest safety numbers on the scooter share services we have in Seattle telling us. All that and a whole lot more coming your way on Seattle News, Views, and Brews, your coffee break political podcast. I'm Brian Callanan. I'm a host on Seattle Channel, and the views expressed here are my own. And I'm joined by, for the last time here, Kevin Schofield of Seattle City Council Insight. This is the man. Kevin, this is our 99th episode. We have
so short of it.
No,
I'm going to come
just
just short of it.
It's good because we still have room to grow. I'll look at it that way. But
you're going to have me back on as a guest.
I know.
At some point.
Yeah, guest of the guest. We'll figure out some way to do it. But a lot to be proud of, and I really appreciate doing this with you. Our last podcast together, but it's been a joy to work with you. It's been
an incredible run. Thank you so much for all your partnership on this. It's been great.
I'm really glad
we get into it.
Yeah, let's figure this out here. A big thanks, of course, to City Grind Espresso. I wanted to make sure we said that. Our background noise sponsor for the audio podcast. They're rocking the party on the first floor of City Hall, so please do support them and all their other small businesses too. Thanks to owners John and Riley for doing that. Thanks also to our patrons. We just welcomed Mark on board, a new patron this week. He joined at the $10 level, so we're going to send him his very own Seattle News, Views, and Brews coffee mug. 11 ounces of goodness right there. And with that, he'll be able to send in a mug shot, a photo of his mug in action to the show. And we'll be using that on the program in the future. But for this mug shot this week, a beautiful picture of Kevin, suitable for framing, I'm going to say, his best Vanna White there with the mug. Very, very good work. Thanks again, my friend. I'm working on continuing Seattle News, Views, and Brews. I should point that out. I'm going to have a very special announcement coming up on, I'll talk to you about it on Patreon. We'll talk about it on the podcast here. Coming up later on this year, right before the end of the year, we'll make that announcement. Finally, as always, a special thanks to Converge Media. They aired the video version of our podcast on Wednesday nights at 7. All right, let's get rolling with right here, right now. Well, Kevin, I wanted to start with, I guess, what's coming up for Mayor-elect Bruce Harrell here. He just appointed a number of leaders to join his administration in the new year when he's sworn in. Manisha Harrell, his niece, who ran his election campaign, she's going to be a deputy mayor. Tiffany Washington, who served under Mayor Durkin, has been named the Deputy Mayor of Housing and Homelessness. That's a new position there for the mayor's office. Plus, former City Council President and Mayor Tim Burgess will be Director of Strategic Initiatives. So he's back at City Hall. I just wanted to get your first take on this team that Bruce Harrell is building and how you see some of these people influencing his leadership.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting mix. There's a set of City Hall insiders,
Yeah.
Everybody from the folks you mentioned already with experience working in City Hall to Dan Eder, who has been the Deputy Director of the Seattle City Council's central staff.
Yeah.
He's going to come over and be Policy Director for Mayor Harrell.
Right.
And then some outsiders, folks like Gerald Hankerson.
Yeah, for NAACP.
Yeah, he's been running the local chapter of the NAACP for quite a while.
Yeah.
So he's really looking to see if he can sort of pull in some people to improve communications with the larger community. As you mentioned, there's going to be a deputy mayor for external relations position, which Mayor Durkin has had at least from time to time over the course of her administration as well. That's still an open position.
Yeah, right.
So apparently,
Washington had that job. It looks like Bruce Harrell's going to look for a new person for that.
Yeah. So he's kind of filling in some pieces like that. He's there's been some shifting around, like at the head of the city budget office.
Right.
The former. The current head of the city budget office, Ben Noble, is going to slide over sideways and become the head of the new economic forecasting office for the city that the city council just created this past summer.
Interesting.
And Julie Dingley, who's been essentially the deputy director of the city budget office, is going to be interim director. We'll see who ends up being appointed long-term for that.
Wow, that's going to be a really interesting piece there. I just wanted to talk about, if we could, the first thing that Bruce Harrell really has to take care of here. There's a lot to consider here to tackle as mayor, but one of the big dates I'm seeing on the calendar, Kevin, and looking this is January 15th, less than 2 weeks after swearing in, we've got an eviction moratorium that is set to end. Some thoughts about that, maybe some of the other big dates that you're seeing ahead in January, because there's a lot of things that he needs to do if he wants to hit the ground running with this job.
Well, apart from dates, the big thing is still going to be COVID.
Yeah, of course.
Especially the Omicron taking off right now.
Yeah,
right.
It really is.
It is still a public health emergency,
Yeah.
right? And it's going to continue to be one. And depending on what we find out about Omicron in the next couple of weeks,
Yeah.
and what happens with super spreader events over the Christmas
Holidays,
holidays, we could go into January with a big public health problem.
Yeah.
Or, it may turn out to be okay. We'll
Yeah.
see. But clearly that's going to have to be sort of at the top of his agenda
Yeah.
going into 2022,
Yeah.
is to make sure that they're really on top of COVID,
Yeah.
that they have the public health resources available, that they're getting booster shots out to people,
Yeah.
that testing sites are set up, and that things just continue to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I know those vaccination clinics are full up. My wife has been working hard to get that booster shot set up, and they're booked. I mean, there's a lot of people getting shots, which I guess is good to hear. But at the same time, you're right. I think that whole situation with COVID is going to tinge everything the mayor does as he steps in there. There was one piece, though. I just had a very interesting interview with Council President Lorena Gonzalez, who was stepping down, leaving office at the end of the year. She talked to me a little bit about this whole idea of the relationship between the city council and the mayor. Super frosty over the past 4 years with Mayor Durkin here. She seemed to think that it would improve. Maybe there's no way to go but up when you bring in Bruce Harrell here. Your thoughts about that relationship and what that's going to look like?
Well, they're certainly going to have a honeymoon phase at the beginning.
Okay, right.
And I think they're off to a better start than the city council is with the city attorney elect. Davison.
Yeah,
that's definitely started out frosty.
Yes, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So at least they haven't taken any missteps yet.
Yes, right.
But the city council is going to have to confirm some of Harrell's cabinet appointments for heading different departments, and we'll see how that goes. And part of that is always depends on how much the city council feels like they were consulted.
Yeah, right.
And this city council in the past has cared a lot about whether the what they call stakeholdering happened, whether people in the community were consulted.
Yes.
Because if they start hearing from people in the community that they think are important, that they were not consulted, as the mayor went about making appointments, there's going to be some noise about that.
Okay. Well, just to jump back on city council, I wanted to wrap up the last full council meeting of the year last week. 40 agenda items there. Maybe we can talk about the city attorney's office a little bit more, because that did seem to be had some controversy to it. This bill that we've discussed, the council really trying to push the city attorney's office to make sure that there are PreFiling diversion programs in place, and that she's responding to that. The council toned this down a little bit in terms of the final version. Can we talk about that, please?
Yeah, there were two parts to this ordinance that were passed. One was a set of reporting requirements, and that's well,
they do that with a lot of
they do that with a lot of stuff. They most of the time don't put it actually into an ordinance.
True.
They ask first, and then maybe put it into like a budget proviso or something like that. But it's not unprecedented for them to put it in an ordinance. But the second part was they specifically said that the city attorney can't make changes to the PreFiling Diversion program without giving the city council 90 days notice. And they were trying to run a very fine line, because the city charter is super clear that the city attorney basically has full what they call prosecutorial discretion. Right. We've talked about this before on the show. And so then the question comes up, well, if they say, you have to give 9 days notice, does that mean that the city council is decreeing that the city attorney can't change policy in less than 90 days, or can't implement it in less than 90 days?
Right. That sounds pretty prescriptive to me.
That probably crosses the line as actually interfering with a charter decree prosecutorial authority. So they changed it before they passed it, the final version of this, to say that the city attorney has to give notice to the city council within 90 days of implementing it.
I see. Right. So afterwards.
So there's no barriers for city attorney elect Davison to make changes, but then there's this notification, and there's plenty of precedent for that.
Okay.
So that's going to be fine.
Okay. We'll see where that one plays out, because that relationship is going to be very interesting. There's one other piece I wanted to touch on here, because Council President Gonzalez brought this up at the end of that very, very long meeting. She's going to be leaving her post, as we know, and she's also leaving her role because of that on the governing committee of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. And I think that's really interesting. I'm imagining whoever does become city council president will step into that role. It's going to be an interesting job to fill, and I wonder what's going to happen next there.
Yeah, so every 2 years, the city council members do a big reshuffling of their committee assignments. And part is, to get them, part is to recognize that seniority is always changing. And there's a seniority aspect as to who picks what areas that they want to, spend time on. And then there's an aspect of it which is just getting, a change after a while. It's like somebody like Councilmember Herbold has been covering public safety for the last 2 years, which has been in complete grind. She may want to continue and see something through, or she may say, like, okay, I've done my part. Let's hand that up to somebody else.
Right.
So there's a great reshuffling that's going to happen. I haven't heard yet any details about who's going to pick up what. I'm sure they're debating and negotiating all that behind the scenes right now. So the council president, there's a very large part of the job which is administrative.
Of course,
They've got 2 sub-departments to run. They've got to run the city clerk's office. They've got to run the city auditor's office. They have to also run the city council's central staff. They have to sign all the contracts from the legislative department. It's a big management job, and a lot of folks in the city council don't want that job, just simply because you don't really have a lot of time to do anything else. And if you look at Council President Gonzalez over the last 2 years,
it's clear
she's had governance and education.
That's
and a lot of the time she's ended up canceling her committee meetings just because there really wasn't a lot to cover. But it's not like she wasn't busy. She was super busy with all sorts of other stuff. So whoever ends up being council president may decide that, like Council President Gonzalez, they want to continue on, representing the Regional Homeless Authority, on their governing board, or they may say, no, I'd rather spend my time doing something different. So I think it's really hard to predict how that's going to play out. We also don't know, whether Councilmember Lewis is going to stay with homelessness. If he does, he will almost certainly end up on the RHA governing board again.
As he has been.
But who will be the second person? I don't know.
Wow. Well, a lot to look ahead with there, but I did want to talk about something coming up next year. An $815 million plan on homelessness proposed by Governor Jay Inslee. What impact could that have on housing in our state and density in our cities? We're going to break it down on. Now hear this. So last week, Governor Jay Inslee made a number of supplemental budget proposals as the legislature prepares for its session coming up in January. He's calling for an $815 million investment in homelessness, housing, and services that he's calling the biggest and boldest plan to date to deal with this crisis. Let's listen to a part of what he said.
We are unveiling a statewide approach that will maximize housing units by getting people into housing solutions, both rapidly and sustainably. We need to know this is a statewide problem, not just Seattle, not just King County, and it calls for a statewide solution.
Well, Kevin, this could be a big boost for our state. In listening to this, the governor made this announcement in Ballard, but he has said that every county in the state will see an investment in this crisis. Do you see this as a possible game changer? What do you make of this?
I think it's going to be interesting. Will it be a game changer? That depends on how much it gets spread. How thinly it gets peanut buttered over the whole state. But let's be clear. There are affordable housing and homelessness issues in every county of the state. We hear a lot about Seattle and King County,
of course,
but every county in the state and every city in the state and every small town has issues with it now. So as you mentioned, $815 million. It's a mix of capital dollars, which need to be spent on things like property and land and things like that, and operating dollars, which can be spent on programs. He said about $540 million of the money is going to come from ARPA, federal emergency funding, which is going to be interesting because that's one-time funding. So if they create, and again,
programs
for programs, that's going to be tough to see kind of what they do with that moving forward. About $330 million for acquiring hotels and properties and other places that can be turned into either affordable housing or new homeless shelters or some mix of that. He thinks maybe they'll get as many as 2,400, 2,450 new units out of that. About $100 million to help people who are behind on their utility bills. That'd be another important part.
Prevent people from going in homeless.
About $60 million for crisis stabilization facilities. So you can think of this sort of as what we've heard over the last few months. Our regional homeless authority proposed for Seattle, and Seattle ended up deciding not to fund the high acuity shelter where people who are currently in crisis could actually be checked in and get the medical help that they really need to get stabilized there. And about $51 million for new kinds of outreach teams, kind of like the Hope Team and things that, and the way Seattle has been kind of pioneering different approaches to that.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about this bill talking about adding thousands of units, as you said, which is going to be interesting. But where to put them is where I see some interesting debates possibly coming forward here. Inslee says, kind of a joiner on this one, he wants lawmakers to pass a bill that would allow for more density. So townhouses, duplexes, et cetera, to be built on residential lots located within a half-mile of a major transit stop in cities with populations over 25,000 people. I thought this was interesting because this is normally something that gets regulated by cities. You start legislating this on a state level. I just think there might be some pushback there in certain communities, and I'm wondering how that plays out in your mind.
But this is a national trend.
Yeah.
This is something that's happening in other states. I believe it happened recently in California.
Yeah,
right.
That
At this, rather than leaving this up to every individual city or town to decide, can so-called missing middle housing be built?
Right.
And for the last 60, 70 years, the trend has been to really sort of protect these single family residential zones and prevent the more density from going in those places. Let's say at the state level, no, you can't do that anymore, right? You have to allow duplexes and triplexes and missing middle housing into row houses, into these kinds of places.
It's so interesting because I actually had an interview a couple weeks ago with former Governor Chris Gregoire talking about this. She's the head of a group called Challenge Seattle, a number of local CEOs here working on this issue statewide. They actually did a poll and they found out 85% of the people that they asked said homelessness was the biggest problem in their community. And looking at the numbers, Spokane County said that to a higher degree than King County. So clearly a statewide issue, and clearly all these different counties need a different response. What's going to work in King County might not work in Island County for that matter. I just wonder how this gets executed, because clearly, as you say, I think there's a desire for this type of activity, at least some answers on a statewide level.
There is, and it's a complicated ecosystem, right? Because there's the part about, is land available for building housing? And is it available near transit and near places where low-income individuals who really need the affordable housing, can find services, and can find transportation, and do all the other things, they can really live their lives in those places. But then there's issues like when you get, there's issues about this in Seattle and King County, but throughout the state about construction. What are construction costs like? Is labor available? Is construction labor available?
There's
right.
A huge
Even if you've got money to build a big affordable housing project, can you actually find the labor to build it? Right. All those factors come into this and trying to move this whole area forward.
This is going to be really interesting to watch. All right. Now, I wanted to make sure we moved on to our next story here, because if Kevin looks a little dizzy on the set today, it's because he's been dealing with a whole lot of spin when it comes to scooter shares in Seattle. You worked on this on SEC Insight. I thought the headline was great. The SDOT putting lipstick on a pig. What did you hear in this presentation to the city council? What should people be concerned about, I guess, with all this?
So let's just go back, rewind a little bit.
Please.
SDOT started a scooter share pilot. They pitched this in August of last year, August of 2020, to the city council, saying, we want to do a 1-year scooter share pilot, bring in 4 different vendors, get as many as like 6,000 scooters out there in the city, and run it for a year. So city council said, okay, they launched it in October of last year, ran through September of this year. And they made all like 15 different promises about things they were going to do, about making, disallowing riding scooters on sidewalks, making people wear helmets, heavily enforcing where the scooters can be parked so they're not blocking sidewalks.
All sorts
and so they came back last week and actually sort of did a first report. They've got a full report they said they're putting out next month in January. But they did a first report on this. And it was definitely lollipops and
sunshine
and sunshine kind of happy, everything's wonderful presentation. And they glossed over a lot of stuff. Everything from the fact that really they haven't been enforcing not riding on sidewalks, and 22% on the data. Some data they've collected, 22% of the rides have been on sidewalks.
And these are people responding to polls and saying, I'm riding on the sidewalk.
70% of people said they almost never wear a helmet. Of the 4 vendors who are supposed to, enforce on their own, bad parking.
Where they park the scooters. None
None of them in the whole year ever hit the target for keeping the number of misparked scooters under 3%.
Wow.
They never hit it. They got better. They definitely got better at the end.
Yeah.
And then you look at the safety numbers in this, and
that's
the SDOT folks who were presenting said there were some injuries.
Yes.
But
right.
we're working on education. It turns out when you actually dive into the injury numbers and do the math all of this, there were some motor vehicles.
Yeah.
Like significantly worse than motor vehicles.
Wow.
Right. So these scooters, just from looking at the data so far, are really not safe. And that is really an undercount. It's a dramatic undercount because largely SDOT hasn't been collecting data on injuries and safety, right?
Yeah.
They promised last year that they were going to partner with the University of Washington and Harborview Hospital to do a year-long study and collect all the data and really do they promised a comprehensive safety study.
Sure.
And UW and Harborview backed out right after that, and they never found a replacement. So now, after the whole thing is done, they say, "Yeah, we're doing a survey. We're going to collect a bunch of data and report on that."
Yeah.
But they don't have hard data on the injuries. I'm talking to King County Public Health to try to get from hospital records what the data is on injuries.
Yeah.
But in the survey that SDOT did already, they 2.6% of the people that they surveyed said it was about 4,000 people said that they had an injury themselves that required medical attention, which should be over 100 injuries right there. The police reports, they only came up with about 17 so far, but there's about 100 just from those 4,000 people. But if you multiply it, I mean, if that 2.6% holds for all of the people, then it's north of 6,000 injuries that happen. I don't know if it is necessarily 2.6% across the entire population, but it's a lot of injuries that happen out there. It's you quickly come to the conclusion these things are not safe.
And you mentioned this too. If the city is going to get real about its Vision Zero, I mean, with this idea of trying to get rid of fatalities, get rid of these incidents involving people on bikes, scooters, or walking, whatever else.
We've already had one fatality with a scooter-related collision here in Seattle. And comparing that to motor vehicle statistics, they measure those as fatalities per 100 million miles, miles driven. And it's a little scary because the motor vehicle number has gone up over the course of the pandemic. And there are people just thinking like, people seem to be less risk averse now. And they're driving faster, driving less carefully. So it's gone from about 1.1 fatalities per 100 million miles driven to about 1.37, which still sounds really small, but it's significant. It's a lot. It's like 40,000 fatalities a year across the country, right? So now here in Seattle with scooters, they've driven over the course of this one-year pilot. They had about 2 million miles
to look at,
and one fatality already. Right.
Yeah.
So, and maybe maybe the real rate is 1 per 100 million miles, right? And it just happened to happen at the beginning of the 100 million miles instead of the end, and people are going to get safer. But 2 million miles in, already having one fatality. That's pretty scary, right? Alarm bells should be going off about that to say, okay, this looks like we have a real problem here, and that which really flies in the face, as you mentioned, of the city's Vision Zero goal of getting the number of traffic fatalities down to zero. They may have just taken a big step in the wrong direction with that.
Wow. Well, we're going to hear a lot more about what the council says about that in the new year. Thanks for breaking that down. All right, everybody. Last chance to dance with Kevin Schofield, civics expert and master of all things baking. We're going to break it down and have a little bit of fun to send Kevin off right in our next segment here. What's next? All right, we're here. Here it is, folks. We are wrapping up my last podcast with Kevin Schofield on Seattle News, Views, and Brews. And Kevin, I guess I should break this down for people. When I started this podcast with you, we were talking about all sorts of stuff. And we started this in January of 2020, before the pandemic. Like, oh, it's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
Probably won't be too busy. You never know. But then all this stuff happened. And I think I realized at that point, or maybe even beforehand, we were covering all these different civic stories, which they're very interesting. They affect a lot of people. But at the same time, one does not live on civics alone, is my thought here. And so I learned pretty quickly here, folks, that Kevin, so one time he brought in on the podcast, I made some macarons. These are kind of cool. I'm like, wait a minute, you made macarons? That's really hard to do. And then he's like, well, might have taken a class and I might be kind of like really good at baking. I don't know. And so it's like, wait a minute. So I decided to focus on a lot of Kevin's good stuff and the things that he makes in terms of baked goods here. And you know what? It's a lot of fun for me. Some people have given me some flack about it, but go ahead and hate on me, haters. This is some really good stuff.
You get flack about
Oh yeah,
that?
there's like people want more civics and less baking. I'm like, come on, maybe we need to switch this thing. I don't even know. So anyway,
we're not giving people enough civics on this.
I know. Come on, I know.
Really, sir?
I got to say they have an appetite for good stuff, and you are wrapping up the show here with something pretty awesome. What do we got here?
Yeah, I mean, it's Scones last night.
Cool.
So, you know, we're recording this at 9 o'clock in the morning. So
Yes.
it's like, okay, if I have to be perky at 9 o'clock in the morning, there's going to be
Get some
carbs.
carbs in the mix.
There's going to be
Right.
carbs in there. So I got some,
Right.
I sprinkle a little brown sugar on the top. But
Okay.
They're pretty tasty. Yeah.
Cool.
But you got some great. Look at
Well,
this.
this is the Christmas cookie explosion that was happening in my house. So
good.
we've got good old shortbread over here making that happen.
Yep.
We've got kind of a nut bark sort of thing going on there with some caramel inside. These guys, I always used to call them hats when I was a kid because I always thought they looked like a hat. But that peanut butter cookie with the Hershey's Kiss in there, and this is kind of a
you got to hold it up to the camera. So
yeah. This is sort of like a cranberry. Maybe I can hold it up here. There's like a little cranberry wrap up here of the good stuff. So we'll be munching on these later. But I just, it's interesting to me. You make a lot of time for baking in your life, and it's a cool thing for you. And I think it's something that brings you a lot of joy. It's really neat.
You know, and it's a family thing.
Yeah.
Like I love cooking with family members.
Yeah.
I've just like, it's part of my family culture.
Yeah.
Right. That I've really tried to cultivate. That you know, it's something you can share with family members.
Yeah.
Something you can talk about. It's something that you can work with family members together to make. So it's kind of the experiential part of it as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I can't blame Kevin completely for this extra.
That's my fault.
Yeah, most of it. I'll say that. But I did want to make sure I passed along a final note of thanks as we wrap up the podcast here. We actually got a number of notes from our patrons. I'm going to read a few of them to you, if I may.
Okay.
Catherine says, "Happy trails, Kevin. I will very much miss your coverage of council." Then we've got Rob, intern Rob. Good old intern Rob. He's the man. "Thank you, Kevin, for making me a more informed citizen. I have admired your work and impartiality for years, and you helped make Seattle a better city because of it. You have set the bar for smart, independent journalism of local politics, and you will definitely be missed. Best wishes for continued success, especially in the kitchen." Okay, that was a good one. Colin gives us this. "Thanks so much for dedicating yourself so thoroughly to demystifying local government and doing it in a calm and sensible way. I hope others learn from you and emulate your skill and tone." Thank you, Colin. That was great. Jackson gives us this. "I moved to Seattle just before the pandemic and was bewildered trying to catch up with just about everything. This podcast and Kevin's writing were pretty key in getting the key players and dynamics. I look forward to buying out the entire stock of his future bakery someday." That's great. That's great. I should point this out. I asked a few of our colleagues in the journalism world for some final thoughts here as you wrap up your work with SCC Insight. So everyone sends their best wishes, but these folks sent along some video too. So let's listen in on this.
Thank you, Kevin, for all the hard work you've done helping people understand what goes on at City Hall and for helping them hold government accountable. And thanks for all the times you've helped me explain things to my viewers. Congratulations on what you've done, and I look forward to seeing what you contribute next.
Hey there, it's Justin Carter from CapitolHillSeattle.com, and sorry, hold on. I've got the city council meeting going here. I've got to monitor these guys a lot more closely now. Kevin, congratulations. Hold on. I got the scanner on. Just bear with me 1 minute. Oh, hold on here. Got Converge starting up. I got to tune into this too. Just give me 1 minute. I hope you get, okay. So I'm out of time. Kevin, best of luck. Congratulations. See you around the internet.
Brother Kevin, it is such an honor to be able to celebrate you and all that you have meant to our city these past few years and all your work with SCC Insight. You've just been a tremendous beacon of light, shining light on some of the chicanery and various other things that have gone on in our city, making this city and its politics much more accountable to the people, much more transparent, and much more, quite frankly, understandable to so many folks. So, my brother, thank you for all of your work, and I'm so glad that we can continue to celebrate you and all that you do. Much love.
Man, wanted to take a second and give a big shout out to you, Kevin Schofield, Sco Money, as we call you over here in the Converge Media Studios. Hey, man, the impact that you've had on us over here, it's been real. You know, they say right people, right time. And, you know, we met right in the heart of the Seattle protests where so many things were happening down at City Hall. We had no idea, you know, what was going on because we were up there on the Hill. But you became a reliable source and resource and friend. And I mean, it's because of your dogged reporting and everything that you've done, staying on top of City Hall, man. You've really not only made Converge a better media platform, but also you've helped to inform and engage countless citizens here in the Emerald City. We're going to miss you on air, man. All these great shows that me and you've had together, all these specials and different things that we've done, you've always showed up. And hey, I just want to take a second on behalf of my colleagues here at Converge Media and wish you all the best.
Well, there we have it, Kevin. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I passed that along, and my heartfelt thanks too. This was a bit of a leap of faith when we started this up last year, and it's meant a lot to me, man. Thank you.
Wow. Just watching that, it's just so humbling. You know, I've had just amazing partners to work with. You, Amari, Marcus, Justin, you know, worked with all of you guys, so many other folks in the city. I've come away from the last 6 years with incredible respect for the hardworking journalists of the city trying to cover City Hall. You know, I know firsthand now how hard it really is to do that. All the impediments and barriers hurdles you have to jump over to get the story and to get the information and get it out to folks and try to explain it in English to folks. So, you know, I want to thank you for your partnership on this. It's been great. I'm going to miss working with you every week.
Me too. Kevin, you're the man. Keep it up. All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, as always. Thanks also to our patrons, of course. Want to make sure we pass that along. Thanks, everybody, for watching the show here, too. It's Seattle News, Views, and Brews, where you can always find out what's brewing in local politics. You can subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you might listen. Again, please do support our show on Patreon. That's always appreciated. I will have an announcement about a new co-host coming up before the end of the year, so make sure you stick around for that. Thanks also for watching on Converge Media. And me and Kevin, we will see you soon. Till next time.
Seattle News, Views, and Brews is an independent production of Callanan Media Services. Copyright 2021.